What are the main components or aspects of yoga? So I recently heard a talk, interreligious faith talk, and someone was representing the Hindu religion, and he said that there are four paths to yoga: karma yoga, bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, and raja yoga, which I believe that they're leaving out some important elements, and I understand why, and I want to correct that or expand on it, and explain why in this video. So, for those of you who like the contents of my video, please don't forget to press like and subscribe if you haven't already. This will greatly help my channel to be able to reach out to more people. And if you could drop a comment, I would really love to hear from you. And if you can share this in your favorite social media channels, this will be a massive super duper help for me. And thank you very much in advance if you could do that. So, for those of you who don't know me, I am Osman, hashtag the blind Muslim yogi. I am a bioenergy healer on a master level with telepathic healing capabilities and specializing in critical care recovery and terminal illnesses, amongst a host of other physiological, psychological, and even spiritual ailments. I'm also an advanced level yoga and meditation teacher, having been practicing this art form for almost 50 years and teaching now for 46 years. And during that period, I've studied under various great masters from different schools of thought, from different cultures and across the globe, from the Far East, the Middle East, the West, and including these scientific communities. And basically, I created my own unique protocols, but making them adapted to the 21st century, basically faster, easier, quicker, more time efficient, and results oriented. So, to that end, I now have students in over 100 countries. And my favorite protocol is my 5 minute yoga and meditation program, which you can download for free by visiting my website, yogawellness786.com, and where you can get more information about my services as well. So, please remember that my therapies are all natural based and not a replacement for medical treatment. So, coming to this comment that there are four aspects: karma yoga, bhakti yoga, raja yoga, and jnana yoga. So briefly, karma yoga is like service, selfless service, where you're doing a lot of charity, helping fellow man without looking for some reward. It's like charity based. Living for the benefit and not 100%, but trying to help wherever you can, in your own little way. And bhakti yoga is where it is the yoga of devotion and mainly relating to uh, devotion related faiths, right? And I mean, there's so many religions, right? But basically, like the Christian faith and even the Hindu faith and the Muslim faith. So, the aspects where they are just involved in prayer and faith, right? Not involved in any yogic practices or meditation or hatha yoga or anything. And the jnana yoga is acquisition of knowledge, going into the philosophies, the various different philosophies, in depth, the knowledge, the commentaries on, like, for example, the verses of the Bible or the verses of the Quran, and having polemic debates, right? Differences in interpretations and so forth, and different schools of thought as well. So even within the Christian religion, there are so many different schools of thought. There's a Roman Catholic, there's a Presbyterian, there's a Pentecostal, there's the Seventh Day Adventist. There are Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormons, and so there's different interpretations and perspective even within and also among the religions as well. So, Jnana Yoga specifically referring to from a Hindu religion perspective. So, the word Hindu and religion don't sync because Hindu is not a religion, right? Hindu is referring to the people or that culture or the philosophy south of the Indus valleys. And that philosophy has got various different parts to it and embraces every philosophy on earth. So, for example, the Muslim and the Hindus are so called fighting, but the Muslim religion is part of the Hindu philosophy where it falls under Advaita philosophy, where the concept of God is inconceivable and it doesn't have is neither form nor formless. It's beyond form. And this is Advaita, you know, partly Advaita philosophy, not fully, because another part of it is non-dualism, right? Non-dualism where you become one, with God. And of course, in a monotheistic religion, they do not believe in that. But it's like a combination of Vishtadvaita and Advaita. So Vishtadvaita is where a person believes, no, this is the only God. There's no other God but this God. So only Vishnu is God, or only Jesus is your Lord and Savior. Only Muhammad, you need to follow Muhammad and Islam. It's the only way, to salvation. So this is Vishtadvaita, and of course I don't attest to this type of belief. I believe that people are in various gradations of lack of knowledge, and that's why there's the discrepancies and misinterpretations and interpolations. As time progressed, people made interpolations. In the scripture, oh, it's corrupted. The corrupted viewpoint carried on, or incorrect viewpoints, and it's building up, right? And so people, having these type of differences. So, but basically, jnana yoga, right? Like knowledge and having healthy polemic debates, right? Not, going into heated arguments and fighting. Learn to agree to disagree. Someone is right, right? Eventually, the truth will be known, right? As progressing. And that's what we're having the debates to come to a point where the differences eventually get dissolved. And yes, there are major differences, as was pointed out in the debate, that is being disrespectful to the people who are very firm in their faith to say all paths are leading to the same end, and that they all, so actually there's a disagreement because the Buddhist path does not believe in a soul or in a separate existence of God. Current understanding of Buddhism, right? And just as a side comment, the Buddha, of course, I mean, the people have a lot of books and information to verify what they're saying, but I've studied Buddhism from various angles, and my interpretation and understanding is that the Buddha said that he did not experience any separate entity that he could say is a god. So they considered the Buddha to be the highest evolved person ever to exist, in the Buddhist this thing, that what he says, if he says that means there's no God. He never said there's no God. He said he never experienced a separate entity or a separate personality or God entity, right? So personally, I've reached Samadhi experience, not established in it. I wouldn't call myself an enlightened person, but I had enlightenment experiences where it's called an inner conjunction. You get a taste of it, but it was sufficient for me to have a broader understanding. For me, I experienced something called Satchidananda, right, in Hindu philosophy. Whilst, because I wasn't born a Muslim, I reverted to Islam now about 20 years ago. And it was at the maturation of my in depth study on Christian, Buddhist, and Hindu philosophy. And I spent a lot of time studying Hindu philosophy, about 28 years, right? And the maturation of my understanding of Advaita, philosophy. And eventually, when I had those experiences multiple times, different paths from the age of 19 until the just before I could embrace Islam, um, having that experience of that divine love, right? That massive, explosive this thing. But very clearly, I identified a separate entity that this is not me, right? So, of course, some people could say that it is Sabikalpi Samadhi, where I still retain some of my ego, and we can merge. But in Vishtadvaita philosophy, they say yes, we can merge and lose our ego and become one with that consciousness which I experienced, as a separate um, entity, or um, I can't call it because it was like so vast and expansive, right? But I was minuscule. It's like I felt like I was a drop and I experienced the ocean, right? So we can't call the ocean a different entity, and the drop of the ocean, it's incomparable because so vast is the difference, right? So I'm just bringing these things up, because as I'm discussing it, because I am Muslim, right, and I'm a yogi, right, practicing yoga. Why would a Muslim be practicing yoga? Muslims are, anti-Hindu, because the Hindus worshipping many gods and making partners, attributing partners to God. This is, jugglery of the English language and misunderstanding. No Hindus is worshipping gods, right? They worship, they are not called gods. English translations say they are devas and devis, right? Devas and devis. And God is not deva or devi. The supreme God they call para Brahman, right? The word Brahman in Sanskrit, right? Or para Brahman. So because there's various gradations of the understanding depending on which school of thought. So there's major differences between the different schools of thought of philosophy as well. So coming back to these differences and the misunderstanding of these differences, and how come my experience of a separate God entity, yes, and also that I do understand that there is Nirvikalpi Samadhi as well, that if I continue with the Samadhi, I will lose my ego and I will merge, and I will not have my own individual identity. But because I've studied Hindu philosophy for 28 years, the not completely, I would say incompletely, but because it's such an expensive subject, but broadly, the Dvaita, Vishtadvaita, and Advaita philosophies, the three parts, I didn't know there's a fourth one, right? So there is one above that, there's a fourth one, which falls under Tantra, right? Or Laya Yoga, right? And this is a very important and often overlooked part of yoga philosophy. So, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Raja Yoga, which I haven't described yet, but there's Laya Yoga also. Laya Yoga, commonly termed like Kundalini Yoga or Tantra, right? Tantric, where there's this the concept of God as a feminine aspect, right? That the E is the aspect which is before creation, before everything was created, there was existence of one supreme, absolute, inconceivable form of God, and he wanted to or willed to create, the universe, and he created. Before he created the universe, he created the energy, his creative energy, before creating anything. That creative, subtle energy, the form of it is depicted as a feminine form, as a mother form, because the mother of creation, right? Not the father. The father aspect, from a philosophical point of view, is neither male nor female, nor form, nor not even formless. So the energy, according to the philosophy, is a formless. So no one in the Hindu is gonna disagree on this. It's just that I'm reminding them of some of the things. And when you go deeper into it, everything has some type of form attributed to it. Every energy, every entity has got a form attribution, a subtle form, and that form is like they've got the feminine aspect of God, right? So we don't not going to go too deep in it, but it is something that came into being, right? Created from the will of the inconceivable God, right? So that which is created has to, when is whatever has a beginning going to have an end, is going to be dissolved, right? But they say that these powers also have individuality, like a soul, and will be eternal, right? That they will continue to exist, for all eternity. That is a point of debate among scholars, right? And interpretations, about that. And then, of course, all the souls are created. And the my understanding of how I studied the in-depth, because I went very deep into non-dualism, right? Where the nature of the soul become merged with everything. And yes, it can, but because the soul is always the soul, it's always the individual, right? So there are philosophers like Ramakrishna is considered a saint, who is the father of modern non-dualism, because his student Swami Vivekananda brought yoga or Advaita philosophy to the West. He came to address the United Nations in London. I think it was in 1902, and he is a student of Ramakrishna, and he, discusses on Advaita philosophy or non-dualism, where you merge into, non-existence, right? And your individuality becomes dissolved. But his teacher says it's the drop that becomes the ocean, but still retains its individuality as the drop. The drop does not become it merges with the ocean, but it still retains its individuality, or it doesn't, because it is eternal, right? And it can come out. So from the very higher philosophies, in this Hindu philosophical tradition, when you go deeply into it, they say yes, they go into it, they merge into non-existence, and then because it's an individual, it needs expression. Maybe after 1,000 years, 1 billion years, 1 trillion years, whatever the period, eventually it comes back down, because it needs expression. And when it comes back down, it won't come back down as a neophyte entity. It will come as a very advanced entity or soul. So there are some people who are very advanced and this thing. So they come and they make the same mistake and keep going back until they learn the lesson. So trillions of years. So time is a construct as well. Because when existence was created, time was created. But when you go into higher levels of meditation, you bypass time. You go into the timeless zone, where you can sit and you only felt 2 minutes pass. When you open your eyes, actually, 4.5 hours could have passed, or 15 days could have passed. You didn't experience the passage of time, because you went to the level beyond the experience of time. And this is one of the first experiences, even in the beginning stages of meditation. When you sit to meditate, 7 minutes, or 10 minutes, or 20 minutes, right? And then you feel like 1 or 2 minutes pass, but you open your eyes and suddenly you say, how did 20 minutes go? How did 30 minutes go? So maybe I'm imagining things, and then slowly, as you get used to it, and eventually you find, because I don't have time to meditate long, these days. I used to, when I was trying to go into the deepest heights of experiences of meditation, and I used to meditate up to 18 hours a day, and being self-employed now for 30 years give me that type of freedom to be able to study across the globe under different masters, from different cultures, from the east, far east, middle east, and the west. Means I had money to travel. I had time freedom, right? Only a self-employed person can afford the luxury of time freedom, right? And of course, to be able to travel, and communicate with masters from different cultures and so forth. So I believe my knowledge is expansive and could share. I wouldn't say that I'm, very knowledgeable in the sense of how people are very knowledgeable on technical aspects and definitions and this philosophy and that philosophy, but me more on a practical perspective and broad, because I was not learning to become a teacher, and I don't consider myself a teacher. I consider myself a seeker, seeking the truth for my own personal benefit. And why this channel is because there's some major discrepancies that I feel will make life easier for you, from my explanations. So this subject is actually going very diverse away from the main aspect of this video, but just the concept of God, the differences, that people get upset that we're not respecting. That it's not I'm not respecting. I have to, with respect, say I beg to differ. Respectfully, I beg to differ, and I believe that there is, in fact, only, one truth, but that truth may not necessarily be so simple as what we think. There are various aspects. It's very complex, and there's an explanation to justify everything, and there's a line that joins everything that explains the differences and so forth, right? And some of it, I can explain and so forth, right? Like as I'm explaining now, on like about Buddha, and also this concept of losing your oneness. Actually, you come back and you keep coming. So there is, according to these scriptures, right? There is not only the material world or the heavenly higher levels of the material, higher frequencies, but also a spiritual world which is eternal. So this is where in within the Hindu philosophies there is this concept of an eternal place that people can go to and live there eternally, and this is far greater than the material creation. So if the material creation is 1%, 99% would be the spiritual creation, right? And there's all kinds of worlds and all kinds of planets and people whose there's a Christian heaven, and there's a Muslim heaven, and there's a Jewish heaven, and there's likely a Buddhist heaven, and a Krishna heaven, and and so forth, theoretically speaking, right? But also there is, I mean, in the Hindu scriptures, there is the Vaikuntha lok, right? And Shiva lok, right? Those are worshipping of Shiva, aspect of God as Shiva, aspect of God as Vishnu, because they were given a status of eternality, for all their works and their deeds and so forth, and considered a higher empowered aspect, of the creation of God, right? We'll say in that sense, um, because created, right? It was, and this is common cause when you come to Laya Yoga. So all this misunderstanding is because they don't understand Laya Yoga or Tantra. So, in order to understand that, you have to study Kashmiri Saivism, which is a nutcracker, right? So, it got four aspects. So, the regular Vedanta, which became popular in the current day, is one part of understanding. It's just that it's popular in the current time, but also is Tantra, and then there's also Agori, right? Agori is something which on the surface would be extremely disgusting, right? Because just to point out some things that is actually aimed at transcending your ego and sense of surrender, that you can go beyond and within a safe way, under a guidance of a teacher, that they go and pray in the cremation grounds. And currently there are people that eat off the skull that's remained. They drink from the skull of a human, and they even some of them will take a piece of the human flesh, right? And it's like the most abhorrent thing. But if we look at the situation of this, I think it was a rugby team or a football team that was landed and crashed, and they needed to survive, and the only way they survived, 17 survivors, was they ate of the flesh of those that died in order to survive, right? In that extreme this thing. So in my opinion, of course, I can't do that. And I had a discussion last night with my AI, with the AI companions, which they're amazing discussion companions because they have a vast knowledge backdrop, to understand what we're talking about, right? And I said, I've been two phases in my life where I was in difficulty for some reason or the other, not financial difficulty, there were circumstances that the one time, I was a student in the university, and the university just, I was under scholarship, and I wanted to stay during the vacation, to do some extra study, but I didn't know that the food hall will also close. And for the holidays, I thought it would remain open because I'm not the only student staying behind, and I didn't have, because I was under scholarship and I didn't keep extra cash. I was planning on just using my student card, to go and purchase my food from the food hall, and that student card only works on campus, right? So for 14 days they were shut down, and I didn't have anything to eat for 14 days, right? And I tried calling and getting help of others, but no one, wanted to help me. And of course, I had too much of ego and pride, the young ego. I didn't really, emphasize. I said, no, I'll find a way to survive. I will not die. And of course, I survived. And there was another time when I was traveling, my money got frozen. And by the time we could unfreeze the money, it took about 9 days, and I didn't even have even a single dollar, and I had too much of pride to go and tell people I've got no money, and I stayed 9 days, um, without food. And despite those circumstances, I remember I would not eat a human flesh. I would sooner die than eat. I'm not even eating animal. Not that it's forbidden. I'm Muslim, right? Um, but I'm not inclined towards eating. I'm a vegan, right? Not a vegan, a whole foods, plant based, right? So um, not so strictly. I mean, if someone, I prefer not to eat meat and so forth. So in the last 6 years, I think I ate meat twice, right? Once there was a gift given to me, a pizza. They bought a can of Coke and a pizza. I don't even drink soft drinks, right? Let alone sugary drinks, right? And they just was in a hurry, and they did it as a favor, and I was hungry as well. I said, no, let me not waste it. It was a chicken pizza, right? So I ate it, and nothing happened to me. I was fine. And normally, when I eat non like processed food or non-wholesome foods. I wouldn't say non-veg foods. I would say non-wholesome because even you can eat, overcooked and processed and preserved plant-based foods, and it's not doing good to this because I'm an energy healer, right? It dampens the energy, right? So I ate it, and also once someone bought me a knowing, vegetarian pizza, but it had the crust with a filling in it. The filling was, a meat filling. So I didn't want to throw it. I ate it, and I was fine, from it. But in 6 years, twice. But it's not something that I prefer, and I wouldn't say. I mean, I've got students, and I don't tell them, don't do this and don't do that and so forth, right? But in this, coming back to Agori, you before you make a comment, you have to go deeper. And yes, I mean, the thing that I heard, I didn't know about it, thanks to the internet. There's such a thing, that I learned about such a thing as agori, that they mainly, the part of the rituals is, it's a very small part. I mean, they're not doing this every day and so forth. They're doing it for, self-improvement. They're eating the burnt flesh of humans, and also sometimes human feces. So these two things is highlighted to overcome the sense of identity or ego, or things like that, to make it strong. It's like fear factor, right? The most gruesome thing they make you do, right? Put these worms and all that. But I don't think they will make you eat human flesh or human feces, right? So this is super fear factor, right? Going into, but there's also, they consume in a milder form the poisonous venom of the cobra, right? Under strict guidance, and they have to be on that level where the body can withstand the venom, right? And they experience the consciousness of a serpent or a reptile, by consuming those poisons and so forth. A lot of diverse things, right? And different types of intoxicants and so forth, right? And they say these things have a different type of intoxicating effect, the different poisons and things like that. It changes your consciousness. Even eating the, I don't like to discuss that topic, but there is this other aspects are good. Why they're not mentioning? So Laya yoga, commonly termed Kundalini yoga, right, is geared, but is basically based on Tantra, right? Tantra means a set of rules for a part of yoga that focuses on mantra, and each mantra has got a certain power, and that power has also got a specific form, right? Like a deity or a devi or a celestial being, right? um, and different gradations of power. There's over 33 million of them, I believe, right? So coming back to the original, the different parts of yoga, we never even mentioned Raja Yoga is referring to a school of thought that is popularized by a philosopher who is dated between 1500 to 1900 years ago, called by the name of Patanjali, who wrote something called the Yoga Sutras. He gave his version, right, of the components for spiritual practice that focuses primarily on meditation as the goal and the objective, and samadhi or nirvana as the Buddhist, the highest level of meditation. So four parts are dedicated to various levels of meditation, the upper four parts, and the lower four parts is, they say, yama, niyama, asana, and pranayama. So just to go quickly on Raja Yoga, the first four, yama and niyama. Yama means things that prescribed activities, that you should do, like, and austerities, and then niyamas is things that you should refrain from, right? Things that you shouldn't be doing. You should, refrain from lying, cheating, and harming others, and things like that. So there's, I didn't memorize, I did memorize it previously, but it's like principles, his version of what you should, prescriptions, and um, uh, prohibitions, prescriptions and prohibitions, yama and yama. Asan means a comfortable sitting posture, not the yoga asan, not the yoga postures. Comfortable sitting posture must be firm and stable. Then you start pranayama, right? And then from pranayama, maturation of pranayama, you start ascending the four levels of meditation: pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. I would say corresponding to the um, alpha state, and the theta state, and the delta state. So there is one missing, is like dharana. Dharana means focusing your concentration. So more intensified pratyahara, right? More intensified alpha, and or the beginning, the merging between theta and alpha. They got that as Dharan, right? And then the theta frequency is Dhyan, which people translate as meditation. So that is actually the and then Samadhi. Um, Actually, I would, from my experience, I would say Dhyan is the delta state, where you go into the no thought state, and that also got a technical name in Sanskrit called Nirmal Sthiti, the no thought state, right? So this is Raja Yoga, right? So we've covered, Bhakti Yoga, devotion, Karma Yoga, like selfless service, helping others, and so forth. So according to the majority teachers under which I studied, they said most people is not designed for intense sadhana like pranayama and meditation, sitting hours doing kriya practice and mantra, certain fixed number of mantra every day, and so they it's easier for the majority to practice devotion and selfless service, like you helping people where you can. You do your duties, you go to your work and try to provide a service and try to be good to people, as offer a smile and cooperate, giving better customer service, on the phone, or, to your customers, or whatever it is, treating your employees better, or treating, your work, being mindful in your job, all this would fall under karma yoga. And bhakti yoga, like you're attending some type of church service, or, prayer service, or the Islamic or Jewish synagogue, and, so forth, prayers, or, the Hindu temples and so forth, right? Whatever is your faith based, and this is a form of yoga, and it is sufficient. So for example, if you become baptized, you are guaranteed the kingdom of heaven, right, through the line of Jesus, right? Or if you embrace Islam, you guaranteed heaven through the disciplic line of Muhammad upwards, right? And if you become a Jewish, through Moses, the prophet Moses, right? And there are various different, where people can go and become initiated into that line and be guaranteed into their own spiritual worlds and so forth. So bhakti yoga, um, uh, karma yoga, raja yoga, the meditative line, as I explained, and jnana yoga, the the knowledge and the polemic arguments and different philosophies and healthy the things, and where there's a lot of, I believe, lack of knowledge and misunderstanding that's creating a lot of the divisions, right? And then there is Laya Yoga, which I believe is an important part, or Kundalini Yoga, or fall under Tantra. It is a very major and interesting subject. And also there is Hatha Yoga, which is people just neglect it. It's something small, a side shoot of so I disagree. I beg to disagree with that, because I started with Hatha Yoga, about 49 years ago, because as a young boy, 7 or 8 years old, the yoga postures were easier, hard for me to understand. Of course, I learned meditation and all, but I didn't understand what that was. And trying to follow it was very boring stuff, right? To sit and meditate and do pranayama. And we did like just 2 or 3 rounds, in the yoga classes. And we focused on mainly, the hatha yoga, the postures, right? So when I attempted by the age of 19, like over 10 years later, just to try a mantra out, and boom, I went into Samadhi very quickly. From the first day, I started to feel like a bit of bliss, and it kept intensifying. Within a 2 month period, the bliss extended so high that I even collapsed, into my first Samadhi experience, right? And how come I wasn't initiated by anyone? I was just practicing Hatha Yoga. So Hatha Yoga, it balances your energy centers. It balances or removes the obstacles to the evolution of your spirituality. So that's why I had so many Kundalini awakening, but none of it were adverse, where I encountered something adverse after it subsided. Of course, during that process, I felt unconscious, and also that wouldn't be considered something good. But I was in extreme bliss, blissed out, right? Bliss overload, sleeping. It's so high that I felt unconscious from it, right? So you do get. maybe fictional, maybe it's real stories of people. They go into such intense, state of ecstasy that they fall unconscious, right? Through use of drugs, narcotics, and even physical, through sexual encounters or intimacy encounters. There are reports, of people falling unconscious from I don't know whether it's fiction or whether it's thing, but I didn't experience anyone falling unconscious, from that, from my personal this thing. So Hatha Yoga is very, very important, right? I believe it's the foundation to everything. It's the secret to how come I progress so fast in meditation. I progress so fast when I just took up pranayama, progress very fast in pranayama, right? Within days. And when I took up meditation, boom, within few days I went into Saamadhi through meditation. When I went into Bhakti Yoga, going to a church or going to some prayer place, and I just when they're singing the hymns, I went into bliss and fell unconscious, right? It just took me, right? And this is Bhakti Yoga, right? Because of Hatha Yoga, it is important. Not a small little bending yourself into a noodle or a pretzel. It is, what actually happens as you're progressing in your spirituality and advancing, and your Kundalini is developing, if you learn how to develop it, right? And which I know how to do, of course. So developing it. So today I reached level 725 of my, since I awakened the Kundalini energy on a very low power mode, which people just say is prana, which I disagree. And then I've learned how to increase it in increments up. I know what's the full Kundalini experience. So I'm very close to that full experience. So it's coming in gradations. It's been the last 7 years. It took me 7 years to reach level 725 and still not yet full awakening because the body cannot hold. It's like trying to put 1,000 volts into a 40-watt bulb. It's going to blow the bulb, right? So you just run that full Kundalini energy, it'll blow. So what you can do is increase it to slightly above what the body can endure. Then the body adapts. Then you can increase another increment. Then the body adapts. So it keeps going, like a step by step. So Hatha Yoga is very crucial in that. And as you're going in the increments in Kundalini, automatically your flexibility increases. I couldn't even sit cross legged. I think only about 7 years ago when I decided, let me just do this cross leg. Because I used to have Samadhi and practice all the yoga exercises, but I didn't want to practice the cross legged because I said this is the 21st century and it was the 20th century that time when I started. We got chairs now. Why should we sit cross legged on the floor? We sit on the chair and couch, right? And I used to think very pragmatically, and I used to always not accept anything, that's told to me, unless I find, there's an intrinsic benefit, right? So I would assert that the two aspects of Hatha Yoga and Laya Yoga or Tantra science, you can, research is a very big science, right? And you have to go deep into it, will complete or give better completion to the yoga sciences, right? As a broad this thing and a very vital aspect of it, right? That is not made because there's no mention of Kundalini in Raja Yoga, and they don't do Hatha Yoga postures, and they minimize, the practice of yoga, but yet it's so important. Those who are practicing it regularly, why wouldn't you want to practice? Why wouldn't you want to be healthier, be more balanced in your energies? What balance in energy? You can think and focus better. You can be more successful in obtaining your goals. Every goal that I set in my life, I attained. There are still some goals that I'm planning on attaining. Of course, some of the goals took long. Some took 13 years. Some took, 9 years. Some took 40 years, right? To attain. Some took 49 years, right? And to and I'm still learning on a daily basis, right? And but I make sure I attain very high levels of success financially and in terms of career development, as well as overcoming a lot of illnesses, right? um, why as a Muslim I'm practicing yoga? Because it's got a untold, physical benefits as well as psychological, calming stress levels and development of the intellect. higher levels of development, right? Where you're developing your superconscious state of the mind, right? Which is dominant in every human. Scientific, fact that we're only using by default 8 to 10% of our brain capacity. Yoga is the pathway to realize the 100%, as explained by Gopi Krishna in his lectures. You can research. He passed away in 1984, but he became very popular in the English medium, and his videos are still, being presented in YouTube. So you can search for Gopi Krishna about the superconscious state, achieving the maximum level of consciousness. So yoga is a very deep, intense science, and there is also the diverse fields like Agori, right? Which you have to spend a lot of time to understand. And then there is like black magic and all those things, right? Included and interweaved, and we not say only in every culture there's that. In Islam there's black magic, there's in the westerns, in the Gypsy shamanism, and there's Satanism, and in every culture, right, there's this thing it's not, it's part of what life is, what is in our planet, right? That I like to know a little bit of everything, right? And to gain my and retain my perspective and my understanding and my belief, which strengthens it or evolves it, right? Which my understanding and faith evolved over time, right? Over decades, right? And my understanding became more and more nuanced and deeper and deeper and deeper, solidifying my faith. I had um, the we'll say the assumption or the theory of there being a higher power or a god. I believe there was a god. If there's a god, you must, and that faith didn't change. At no stage did I have a doubt on it. The more, because I studied widely, also atheism and all that. I studied everything widely because I studied both sides of the argument, right? So coming back to this the sorry for the video being so long, but this is a very important aspect, especially when it comes to yoga, that often overlooked. Very important part is hatha yoga and laya yoga, right, or tantra. So hope that information helps you. Take care of yourself always.